واتبعوا ما تتلو الشياطين على ملك سليمان وما كفر سليمان ولكن الشياطين كفروا.
Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, I'm here with Ustad Tim Humble, and this is a series that we've just started called Defense Against the Dark Arts. Inshallah ta'ala, in this series we're going to be going through a Q&A with Ustad Tim on the issues pertaining to ruqya, magic, evil eye, jinn, and all of the topics that are surrounding it. So sometimes we're going to be talking about things that are directly related to ruqya, and sometimes we're going to be talking about things that are surrounding the topic. So a common question that a lot of people have presented over the years is this issue of card tricks and magic tricks. You get those little magic trick sets, and the kids, they play it, they have the coin tricks, they call it sleight of hand, so on and so forth. What is the ruling on this? Does this fall under magic, or is it just like the Sharia silent about it? What's the hukm on this?
Okay, Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala amma ba'd. So this is what the ulama, at least in modern times, call as-sihr at-tamthili, acting out magic, where a person essentially is copying the actions and the activities of magicians without engaging in real magic. Okay. So when we talk about real magic, we mean what is effectively the worship of the jinn, okay, or matters relating to kufr. For example, disbelieving in the Quran, disgracing the Quran, worshipping the jinn, calling upon the jinn, asking them for help. Okay. This is what we're going to term real magic. Okay. What you've asked me about in terms of the box sets and the card tricks is acting out magic. Okay. So the scholars of Islam are unanimous in forbidding this. From the scholars who have spoken extensively about the fact that this is absolutely haram is Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan hafidhahullah ta'ala. In numerous fatwa from him, I've come across at least 3 in which he speaks extensively about this. But without just talking about scholars, let's just go back to some of the reasons why this is haram. If we've established that it isn't sihr in its reality, as in there is no worship of the jinn involved, a person is just messing around with a coin or a card or something like that. Okay. But I haven't come across a scholar of Islam from the well-known scholars who have spoken about this issue except that they have declared it to be haram. And we're going to talk about some of the reasons why they declared it to be haram. Okay, so one of the first things is that it normalizes magic for people. Okay, it makes people desensitized to magic, and it makes people enjoy magic and want to participate in magic. And that is a huge thing. If you think about something that normalizes a huge sin, and remember, when we're talking about magic, we're talking about kufr. We're talking about disbelief in Allah Azza wa Jal. So how can we take part in an activity which normalizes disbelief, which basically makes disbelief acceptable and normal and fun for our children to play with? For example, would you dress up as a priest and give your child a little copy of the Bible and tell them to pretend to be giving a sermon? Wallahi, wallahi, this is worse than that. Yeah. It's worse than that, subhanAllah, because you're sort of imitating an individual who is from the worst of Allah's creation, and from the shayateen al-insi wal-jinn, from the shaitan of the men and the shaitan of the jinn. So it normalizes magic for people. It involves copying non-Muslims in their activities. And we know in the hadith of Ibn Umar, that's narrated in Sunan Abi Dawood, that Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum." Whoever resembles a people is one of them. And this resemblance is not absolute, meaning it doesn't matter, someone resembles them in their, their skin color, or someone resembles them in their language, but we're talking about resembling them in acts which are part of their religion or identified only with them. Now, if we apply this to magic, the person playing with these cards and these coins is resembling the magician, like the magicians at the time of Musa, the ones that were the magicians of Fir'aun, because they were engaged in illusionary magic, sihr takhyil. And that illusionary magic was done through worshipping of the shaitan and coming close to the shaitan. So it was an act of kufr. But when we get a card trick out and we play with the cards and the coins, we're resembling those same people from the Sahara of Fir'aun, the magicians of Fir'aun. We're resembling those people in an act of that was part of their religion. It was part of the polytheist religion that they were a part of. So at the end of the day, we are absolutely applying the meaning of this hadith to the utmost degree. مَنْ تَشَبَّهَ بِقَوْمٍ فَهُوَ مِنْهُمْ. Whoever resembles a people is one of them. So that's another reason why this is something which is forbidden. Furthermore, it leads to the practice of real magic. Because let's be honest, after a while you get bored of the card tricks. You get bored of moving things under the cup to know which cup it's under and things like that. And people want to do something more serious, especially when they start following the magicians on TV and so on, and they start looking at what they're doing, and what they're doing is way above card tricks and coin tricks. They want to go to a step further. And just like people get involved with sort of hard drugs by they begin with like so-called soft drugs, and maybe they begin by smoking, or they begin by, and before long they're addicted to some serious stuff. Likewise, the same thing happens here. So it is a dhari'ah to shirk. It's a path which leads to shirk. It's a path which leads to kufr. And at the end of the day, a path which leads to shirk is undoubtedly haram. And undoubtedly haram. Because what it's going to do is a person is going to effectively be led down a path of starting with card tricks. And if you look at any of these magicians who are genuinely magicians, many of them will have started with just sleight of hand, card tricks, and so on and so forth. But it's something that has then led them to worshipping the shaitan besides Allah Azza wa Jal. And it's a very quick path to that, because there's a limit to what you can do with the speed of your hand. And before long, to be like with the elite of the people who practice this illusionary magic, you need to involve yourself with the jinn. And so what's going to happen is the shaitan may attack a person from where he cannot see. So he may come to a person and say to him, don't you just want to be a bit quicker at that trick? Shouldn't I show you how to make that trick like absolutely undetectable? How to make your hand just that bit quicker? And ultimately he leads them until he ends up worshipping the shaitan. And the fourth point that I have on this topic is that most people are unable to distinguish at a high level between magic that is acting and magic that is genuine illusionary magic that involves the jinn and the shaitan. Most people are not able to distinguish. So even now you hear people debate about this magician and that magician. Is he really worshipping the jinn? Is he really involved with the jinn? Is he not involved with the jinn? What's his situation? And people are unable to distinguish. And for that reason, there is no doubt that this magic which starts with acting, it's not possible for people to easily distinguish between it and between the magic that involves worshipping the jinn, except for those people who have a knowledge of the subject in some detail. So this is a huge door that you would open for the ordinary people. And in reality, if we look at these reasons, and I just gathered a few of them, if we look at these four things that we gathered together, these four things, basically any one of them on its own would be enough to consider this from the major sins. Any one of them on its own. Just the fact that it is a path that leads to shirk. Just the fact that it is resembling the disbelievers in those actions which are specific to them in their religious beliefs and those things that are associated with them. Just the fact that it leads people to love the kuffar and the Sahara, to love those people whom Allah Azza wa Jal hates. Just the fact that people aren't able to distinguish between this and between the action which is kufr and shirk, leading people to go to watch magicians and so on and so forth. Any one of these on its own would be enough to consider this to be a major sin. So how about when we gather together all four of them, or even more of them than that, and we say that in reality this issue is one that should be clear for everybody, that these card tricks, whether they are at a very simple level, whether they are at a more complicated level, that, all of them have those features in them. They resemble the non-Muslims. They allow people demonstrate their love and their allegiance for those people who commit kufr and shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all of the other issues that we covered in that. So I think for that, it's very easy to see from what angle the scholars declared this to be haram. And if a person is involved in this, they need to stop before they go further, because wallahi, there gets to a point, I'm not going to say it's a point of no return, because there is a chance for tawbah for everyone, but it's a point from which very, very few people return. And that is a point where the people start to get engaged in disgracing Islam and disgracing the Quran and worshipping the jinn and the shaitan. The person who gets to this stage, it is very, very, very few people who turn back from that. And so someone might now be playing with card tricks, and tomorrow he might be worshipping the shaitan. So he needs to turn back before he gets to that stage where there is almost nobody that returns from it except the one who Allah Azza wa Jal bestows His mercy upon.
Like I said, that's actually very profound, because when you think about it, you know, lowering the gaze from looking at a woman who's haram for you, or a man, was to prevent zina, which is a major sin. But you're saying that the ulama have said that this sleight of hand and magic and all these magic tricks have been made haram. Why? Because it's preventing you from shirk, which is not a major sin. This is the ultimate sin. So if lowering your gaze is haram because it's going to lead you to zina, then this obviously, min bab al-awla, it's more befitting that this is haram because it's going to lead you to shirk, which is going to take you outside the fold of religion. Just very quickly, Ustad, you know, what about watching magicians? Like, you know, you've got people out there, like people, the kids, they watch this guy called Dynamo, David Blaine, these guys, you know, they watch some of the magicians. We understand acting out these practices of sleight of hand and magic tricks is haram, but what about watching them? Is that the same? Also, movies that glorify magic, such as Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, and whatever else comes out nowadays, does this also take the same ruling?
Okay, so on the topic of watching these magicians, the first thing we need to understand is that the majority of these famous magicians who are well known for their they call stage magic are actually involved in real magic. Dynamo, for one. I mean, those people who have knowledge of the field, you only have to look at him and look at his behavior and look at the kind of things that he says to know that he is involved in real magic. He's not a guy who plays with the cards under his sleeve. You know, he's a person, although he may do that as well, he is a person who is involved in real, genuine magic, as in the worship of the shaitan. Now, to watch a person like that has a number of harms. All of the harms we mentioned in the previous question can relate to this, because at the end of the day, if somebody is watching a person like that, they are displaying a degree of love for them. They are displaying a degree of allegiance towards what they do and a degree of happiness with what they do, which is a huge sin in of itself. All of the harms, you know, they are still there. That means to lead you to shirk, to want to copy him, to want to do what he does. That is also a huge problem, but it has other harms as well. I heard more than one of the scholars say that the ruling of going to a kahin, going to a fortune teller, is the same ruling as the one who watches the magician on TV. As in, the one who watches the magician on TV is the same ruling as the one who goes to the kahin.
Your salah will not be accepted for 40 days.
So you are in one of two situations. If you believe in what that person says and you believe in what that person does and you've accepted their way, then you have left Islam. And if you do not believe in it, you watch it for entertainment, then your salah is not accepted for 40 days. This is a big problem. A big problem. And there are other things, as well, when we come to this topic of these stage performers. But just the fact that there are scholars in Islam who consider that your prayer is not accepted for 40 days because you watch this person on TV. Because that's the same as the one who reads the horoscope, and it's the same as the one who goes to a fortune teller to ask what's going to happen to them tomorrow. They all fall under the same category of performing things during or using magic. So at the end of the day, watching them is the same as the one who goes to the fortune teller to watch them for entertainment. And that person, their prayer is not accepted for 40 days. So the matter is very, very serious indeed.
Would that also now apply to movies? Would they look like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings?
So the movies are different. And the reason the movies are different is because when it comes to the movies, that we know for a fact they're acting.
Okay.
So we know this person isn't engaged in real magic. I mean, what they do outside of their filming is a different issue. But we know that they themselves are not engaged in real magic because it's done by special effects and computers and stuff like that. Now, the things we said in the previous question also apply here, about people being content with that and enjoying it and using magic as a form of entertainment, and it leading them to shirk by wanting to emulate, you know, Harry Potter or whatever it is. But there's something else in that as well. It involves that, you know, that act of lying as well. You know, that issue of acting. And the scholars have consensus, and this is a matter of consensus among the scholars, which more than one of the scholars narrated, which is that the person who acts the role of a disbeliever, committing acts of disbelief, this is absolutely haram. Because the scholars had a difference over acting something beneficial, about, you know, acting, you know, for example, telling little kids telling a story with a moral in it about, you know, what happened to the good man and the bad man. The scholars differed over this, with some of them saying it's haram and some of them saying it's allowed with conditions. But all of them agreed that it is absolutely haram to play the part of a person who is a disbeliever, who is committing open acts of disbelief. And at the end of the day, we have to understand the essence of what magic is. You know, Harry Potter has done something that probably no other book and film series has probably ever done. And that is, it has truly normalized magic and made magic something fun and entertaining. You know, you get a little boy who woke up one day and he realizes he's a wizard and he has lots of fun and he does lots of good things and he helps to save the world and whatever. And let me tell you the reality of what Harry Potter would look like in real life. First of all, you can't be born a magician. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us this in Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah Azza wa Jalla said, وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينَ عَلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينُ عَلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ. They followed what the shaitan gave out in the time of Sulaiman. وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانَ وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا. Sulaiman did not disbelieve, but the shaitan disbelieved. يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ. They taught the people magic. So from this we learn that magic is something that is learnt. You're not born with it. You didn't wake up one day and you're a wizard or a witch. And you learn it. And how do you learn it? By worshipping the shaitan. As Allah Azza wa Jalla said, they learn what harms them and does not benefit them. وَلَقَدْ عَلِمُوا لَمَنِ اشْتَرَاهُ مَا لَهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنْ خَلَاقٍ. And whoever purchases this, whoever goes out to learn this and implements that what they have learnt, مَا لَهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنْ خَلَاقٍ. He has nothing in the akhirah, no share of Jannah at all. And that means he left the religion of Islam. He has no possibility of Jannah. And then to sort of look at the reality of it, the worship of the jinn, the disgracing of the Quran, the sacrifice to other than Allah, and all of these things that are essential components of magic. Because the essential nature of magic is an agreement between the magician and the jinn, where the magician agrees to disbelieve in Allah and call others to that disbelief, and the jinn agrees to provide a service to the magician in return for his disbelief and him calling other people to disbelief. That's the reality of what Harry Potter would look like in the real world. He wouldn't be going to a little school, you know, playing around with his toys. And he would be going to a school where the people worship the devil, where the people disgrace the Quran, where they cover the Quran in filthy substances, where they write the names of Allah to make fun of the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal, where they commit the worst kind of sins, the kind of sins, we're not talking about the kind of sins you find in the book of major sins. We're talking about beyond that, you know, the worst kinds of zina, the worst kinds of killing, you know, the most horrific things. That's the reality of what Harry Potter would look like in the real world. So this dressing up, what has it done? It's made the average person believe that there is such a thing as white magic or good magic. And Allah Azza wa Jal explicitly refuted this concept in Surah Al-Baqarah. وَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُم. They learn that which harms them and there is no benefit in it. Meaning there is no such thing as white magic. There is no such thing as good magic. All magic is evil. All magic is devilish. All magic is kufr. And ultimately, what are we teaching our kids when we give them Harry Potter? We're teaching them to glorify magic, that magic is something fun, that magic is something good, that magic is, you know, part of the fight of good against evil, when in reality, magic is all evil. So for me, these books and films are extremely, extremely harmful. And wallahi, what they lead the people to in terms of glorifying disbelief is something beyond people's, you know, beyond what we could have appreciated would happen, what we would have expected would have happened. You know, the way these books have taken off and the films and so on, and they've become, you know, some of the most popular books and films that have ever been, you know, released. But subhanAllah, when you think about what the essence of what they're teaching the people is, that they're teaching the people that magic is something good, and magic is something wholesome, and magic is something, hey, you know, your kids could get involved in it one time, and it's just desensitizing people to that haram and normalizing that evil in front of the people. And, you know, to a certain extent, you can see parallels in that with the way that films have normalized, for example, zina. You know, at the end of the day, you know, you can look back to probably the early, I don't know, maybe the early 1900s or something like that, where you have really these things being a big taboo. Maybe they exist in society, but they're a big taboo. And then the films start coming out. And what do the films do? They start glorifying and they start making people normalize towards zina. That zina is something normal, and that, you know, relationships outside of marriage are something completely normal and completely average for everyone to take part in. And look at what that did in the 50s and the 60s. Then you have the big liberalization of the people, and you have people committing zina left, right and center, until now that basically those films have destroyed the institution of marriage, even among the non-Muslims. They don't really see that to be a big deal, because this society, the adverts and the books and the films have basically normalized that practice for people. And wallahi, I fear that these films and books about magic are going to do the same thing. They're going to basically normalize the practice of magic by people, or at least make people think that there are good options and bad options. And that, subhanAllah, is something which is extremely, extremely dangerous, because if we looked at what is done with zina, I mean, zina is a major sin. But we're talking here about leaving the religion of Islam, about something which normalizes kufr, normalizes disbelief, and that is a huge, huge issue.
No, I think that's very profound, and I don't want the brothers and sisters to think that's a bit far-fetched, you know, saying that, you know, magic is going to be normalized to an extent where everyone's doing it like they're doing zina. Because you have to understand that was like a 50-year process, a 50, 60, 70-year process, where now to find a person who's in college and hasn't lost their virginity is very rare. So I'm saying, yeah, it's true. Today, maybe not everyone in the streets is practicing magic the same way they're doing zina. But 60, 70 years down the line, it's true. It's heading in that same direction. So it's something that we should be very cautious of. Barakallahu feek, Ustad. Inshallah, we'll carry on with the next question. Assalamu alaikum.